This is Tanya Lynn with the Sistership Circle podcast. From spirituality, sexuality, and sisterhood to business, relationships, contribution, and creativity, the Sistership Circle podcast introduces a new model of feminine leadership where women get real and vulnerable about it all. Tune in for authentic advice that will empower you to be bold, beautiful, and brilliant as your true self. Hello, Tanya Lynn here, founder of Sistership Circle, and today I'm going to talk about what the heck is Circle anyway. We've had a lot of women scratching their heads and trying to demystify, like, what is the Circle thing? As we've had Sistership Circle Day happening, a lot of people, have been introduced to this new concept and are really curious because it sounds interesting, but what the heck is it? What do I do at a circle? So, in this video, I want to share a little bit about my experience of how I've become a circle leader, and have trained facilitators, but, why circle is so important and what exactly it is, so that you can walk away like pretty clear on the specifics of what happens in circle and what exactly it is and what you're going to benefit from if you participate in it. So if you are joining, I'd love to know who you are. So go ahead and type in your name and where you're from and say hello. And I'm going to start this off by saying something that may be a little bit radical, because it's an opinion. But what I truly believe is that circle is something that everyone needs. But most people don't actually know that they're missing it, or that they're not even present that they need it until they're in it. And I truly say everyone, because I believe that circle as this concept is actually what the world needs as the antithesis of the system that we're currently in. And so what we learn in circle is a new way of living that I believe that this planet is deeply aching for, and that humanity really actually needs for its evolution. So with that said, I want to first start with the story of how I started to circle myself and how I've now trained hundreds of women to facilitate it. Really why I do this work and why I'm so passionate about it. It's just so you could kind of see my perspective of it. But, I started doing events, women's empowerment events back in 2009. And as I started to do this work, not really understanding anything about the feminine, not understanding circle, like none of this was in my awareness at all. But what I found is through the process of putting on these events, and we'd always have a speaker and a lot of people there. But what happened is that a member of our organization came to me about 6 months in to starting and said, hey, I think these events are great where we all get together. And, there's 30, 40, 50 women in a room. But what would happen if there were like just a few of us, like 10 to 12 of us, who actually met every week? And that was actually the formation of the very first Sistership Circle. And that's what we called it, was Sistership Circle, where each week there was a group of us, there were 12 of us who get together, we'd circle up, and we would talk about what it is that we're creating in the world. And it became the circle of support and empowerment and transformation. And it was just this beautiful experience. And having a taste of that, of not this large event where everyone's, coming to, listening to these amazing speakers and getting really inspired. But we started to go deep, and I realized, wow, like this is why I wanted to start these events, unknowingly, that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to bring women together to support each other. And I found for myself that I started to go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and then actually created a system and a structure for women to come together in circle And now I'm training women all over the world to do this. So I'm sharing that because at the beginning, I had no idea what it was. I didn't realize that it was something missing in my life. And through the process of experiencing it, I then came to realize how valuable it was and how much I really needed it and now want it and now can't live without it. So let's define circle. So my definition of a circle is when more than two women gather. And I would actually probably say that, a circle is really probably more than three women who gather together for a purpose. And that purpose is spiritual and transformative in nature. That's my definition of it. So when two or more women are gathering, how are they gathering? Well, physically, they are sitting in an actual circle formation. That is actually really important. It's a circle, right? So we're not in stadium seating or, teacher in the front, everyone looking at each other's head, only looking at the teacher. Everyone can see each other. Everyone's in a circle. And that's really, really important distinction. And that really, truly is how the circle starts, is that we're sitting down, equal, everyone is on the ground or everyone's in chairs, but we all feel like we're equal contributors to the circle formation. And so what happens energetically with that is that when we can all see each other, when we can hear each other, and when we all feel like we're equal, then that's when we can start to come into the space of circle and what circle can start to work on us, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, first I want to back up a second and say that circling, women's circles, were happening for thousands of years, a long time ago. And then this art form of women gathering in circle got lost, and then it came back. So we're in a process of remembering what it means to circle. But the women who came before us thousands of years ago, this is what they did on a regular basis. Why did they do this? Number one was, the men were out hunting and the men were out, out doing the work. What did the women have to do? They were taking care of the children. And because we were more tribal in nature, where we were in these small communities, women would all come together, circle up, talk, sew together, play with the kids together, support each other. And if you've heard of the red tent, women would actually go under a tent when they were menstruating all together, because back then, without all of the EMFs and the technology and the lights and all of this, women's cycles were synced with the full moon, right? So full moon, ovulation, new moon, we'd be on our periods or menstruating. And so back then, women would just rest and take care of themselves. So they go and they gather all together because they were all bleeding together. And that's why they called it the red tent, because everyone was bleeding. And they would relax and nurture each other and nourish each other and commune together. And also in this tent, supporting each other with childbirth, supporting each other when they're sick. So women gathering and communing in this way is something that is literally embedded in our DNA. And it's what's natural for us as women to do. So now that we're in modern day, what's happened? We all live in our own separate houses. We're isolated, for those who live in a city where it's mainly, we're driving cars. We're in our own cars. We're in our own houses. We're just in isolation and separation from one another. And there's something that feels missing within us, that we don't even know what the solution is necessarily, but we know that we want more connection. And so a women's circle is what then provides that opportunity to come out of isolation and to come back into to commune and to come back into community with other women, where we can reconnect and we can feel supported and we can feel like we're not alone, right? So most women are isolated, are really freaking busy, because that is how our society has taught us that we need to, the only way for you to matter and for you to look important and for you to be successful is to be busy. And we're disconnected from our truth, from our higher self. We're much too much in the head. We're discontented with life, doing the things that we think we should be doing versus the things that we desire to do, the things that we love. We're lonely, we're stressed out, we're burned out, we're overwhelmed. And so we're looking for, like, this can't be what life is. This can't be what I signed up for, right? There's got to be something else out there. There's got to be something that feels more fulfilling, where I feel connected with my soul, with my truth, with my heart, where I feel connected with others, and where I feel connected to something greater than myself, something higher than myself. And that is actually what we find when we come to Circle. Circle is the place to reconnect with our truth, reconnect with our soul, with our heart. It's the place for us to feel like we're part of something greater than ourselves. And that is what then gives us purpose, is knowing that there is fulfillment in this life, in this human existence. And Circle is the place then, and you might have heard these words as like little, buzzwords, but it's the place for authenticity. It's the place for connection. It's the place for intimacy, because of that physical formation of us sitting in a circle and all seeing each other's faces, all seeing each other's eyes, feeling equal. And then we can, having all of our hearts open to each other, that we can reconnect with the truth of who we are. We can come back to finding who am I, and be our authentic selves, where we no longer have to put on the mask to fit in with what we think we should be doing, what society's told us that we can do. No, we can actually let that all go in Circle and come to be just our real self, where there's nothing to hide. There's no mask that we want to put on or need to put on. We just get to be ourselves. And what I've also seen is that most women do not have a place to let go of that mask. And they don't have a place where they can share authentically what's really going on for them. And most of the time, the men in our lives just don't really have capacity for our emotional state, for, to kind of hear us. They don't have really the mental capacity as they're doing their man thing, right? And they're working or whatever, to hold space for us. Because as women, we are emotional. We go through the cycle every month. Like, we're up and down, and we've been called crazy for it, but it's actually just what it means to be a woman. We feel that's what it means to be a woman. And so if we're trying to find that type of support from the men in our life, it's not the same as what we're going to get from the women in our life. And the women in our life, we actually, so much of how women relate is talking about kind of the superficial. So Circle is the place for us to have a place to go where we can just be ourselves and talk about what matters and go underneath the surface. Because the Circle is designed for that. That's the intention for it. So what we do in Circle is we share, we listen, we reflect each other's greatness and each other's shadow. We integrate what we learn in circle into our life. And so we start to really bridge the gap between compartmentalizing everything and starting to get that all of life is connected and that there really truly is no separation. And that's what we learn in circle. So at Sistership Circle, the main component of our circles is a group share. And what I mean by that is that every single woman goes around the circle with equal time to share on whatever the topic is. And that topic might be what's up in your life right now. It might be let's talk about sex, let's talk about money, let's talk about what's bothering us, right? Whatever that topic is that's designed by, for that circle, designated by the facilitator. But that is the main component. And why do we do that? Why is our main component this large group share where everyone shares in our circle? You can't skip. You can't opt out. Every single woman shares. And that is so that you have a place where you get to be seen and heard. Just you. You get to be seen and heard as yourself. Because where else do you really get that? Where you have people who are giving you their undivided attention and listening and seeing you for who you are, your truth. It's like peering into each other's souls. There's not a lot of places for that. And where they're going to listen without interrupting you, without trying to coach and fix you. They're just going to hear you out. That's a pretty freaking awesome place to be. And most of us have never experienced that in our lives. So it might feel a little scary, vulnerable, naked. But once we actually start to have that experience and we truly get to feel seen for sometimes the first times in our lives, it's magical what then happens, right? Because then we get to start to get in touch with the truth of who we are. And we're like, oh, there's a relief that happens. And there's also a confidence that builds. When you get to share without any feedback, without interruption, you start to find your voice. You start to trust yourself, your inner voice of authority, and also that your voice and what you have to say matters. Because most of us have not been taught that our voices matter and that what we have to say matters. Because as little kids, we were told to shut up, don't talk unless you're called on by the teacher, right? So for most of our lives, we've grown up thinking that what we have to say doesn't matter. But in Circle, you get to actually reclaim that. And this might be really scary, but it's heart-opening. And it opens our hearts, and most of us are caved over, and we're protecting our hearts from getting hurt. And so this process of Circle actually allows us to open our hearts and to have more meaningful, deep, authentic relationships with one another, where we value ourselves, we value each other, there's respect, which is all the things that we really truly want. But most of us are scared because we've never experienced it before, and it feels really scary to be that vulnerable. And this is a very transformative experience. It's transformative when, for the first time, you're being heard, or the first time you're being witnessed, and not and given permission to feel your feelings and to even cry if you're moved, and that's okay. Because most of us have been taught that it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be emotional. Stuff it down. Our society has not really honored or valued that, right? It's too much. So when you actually get to feel these emotions that come up for you, then you get to move through them, which is a very cathartic, transformative experience. And then at Sistership Circle, we supplement that large group share with different activities. It might be a meditation or a visualization, or maybe we do movement, or maybe we sing, or maybe we do some paired shares, or maybe we do some kind of ritual. but whatever can supplement and enhance the intention and help that intention to be realized in the circle, to help us move through a process. And what I would say is the intention of circle is to connect, it is to heal, it is to transform, and it is to rise. Rise up as individuals into our true full potential, into who we are supposed to be. Like, I'm talking like why your soul came to this planet, to make the difference that you were born to make, and to rise up as a collective. Because that's really what's happening on the planet. You see it everywhere, is women are rising up. They're not taking no for an answer. They're not being shut down and dimmed any longer. And so Circle is actually a really powerful vehicle for women to rise up together as a collective sisterhood. And so what we're doing in Circle really is learning how to be. We're remembering what it means to be a woman. We are practicing feminine leadership. And what I mean by that is to lead from your feminine essence, not trying to be like a man in your leadership, but your superpowers, your feminine superpowers, like your intuition and your emotions, to lead from that makes you woman. And we're reclaiming sacred sisterhood. And so some of the components or the distinctions that make Circle what it is number one, Circle is safe. And what I mean by that is that you are not going to be physically hurt or harmed for speaking your truth. And that's huge, right? That you're safe enough to be yourself and to be brave. At Sistership Circle, we're always talking about a brave space. But we have to create safety, that it's okay to be brave. It's okay to speak your truth. That it's welcome. That Circle is sacred. And what I mean by that is that Circle is not just we're going to get around and talk about the weather or shopping or have these kind of superficial conversations. No, we're going to go deep. And in sacred, I mean that there's a spiritual center to the Circle, that there's a higher power at work, that we're connecting with the divine, whatever that means to you. It's not religious in nature, but Circle is connected with a power higher than ourselves. There's magic, there's mystery. This is why it's so like kind of elusive of like, what is the Circle thing, right? There's a mystery, there's like, it's enshrouded. But that is because it is sacred, and sometimes the sacred is mysterious. Circle is open. It's open for all women. It's not exclusive. It's not just for the privileged. Circle is for all women. Every woman on this planet belongs in the sacred sisterhood. Circle is a metaphor for life. And Circle is life itself. We think about the wheel of life, the wheel of the year, the wheel of how, all these different areas of our life. So really, Circle's an opportunity. I like to think of it as like the playground. It's the safe space to learn how to be a woman, how to be a human who feels, whose heart is open, and that we integrate that into our life. So it's a place for us to practice and then take all of what we learn in Circle and apply it to our life. And that there really is no separation. And how we show up in Circle is exactly how we're showing up in our life. And so if we actually want to have the life that we desire and not live a life according to what the man says that we should do, we learn how to do that in the Circle, and then we bring that out into our life. So that's what I've got in Circle. And, it is something that you have to go and experience to then get. And to get that all along, you've needed it. And yet it's a timing thing as well, of when you're open and willing to step into the circle. And because that, you're going to be exposed. You're going to be naked. You're going to be vulnerable. And yet it's learning, what your edge is with that. But once you step in, you're going to transform. You are going to become a different woman. That is guaranteed. And you're going to shift and alter your relationship with yourself and with other women. Definitely. But you've got to come into that experience open and willing to listen as well as to speak. And then that's how you're really going to get the medicine. So, if you have any questions about this, please leave them in the chat, and I can come and answer them later, after this video completes. But just really want to share with you the distinction of circle. And the last piece that I'll add is, what is the difference between, I think it's pretty clear, but just to really make it clear, what's the difference between circle and any other type of event? So if you go to a lecture, you go to a networking event, you go to any other type of event, it's completely different, right? So like a networking event, it's people, there's no intention that's set, right? There's no agreements that are put in place to create the safety. It's almost like a little bit of a free-for-all, right? You're kind of out there to fend for yourself. There's no real structure. Maybe there's a speaker and maybe there's, designated time, but there's really no rules, or I don't want to say rules, but there's no agreements set in place. There's no, you're not actually sitting down in that circle formation, and that there's a very clear intention and a very clear framework for how we're relating and interacting with one another. That's what makes circle very distinct, is the agreements that create that safe, sacred space. The framework of how we're going to interact with one another. Those pieces are what make circle distinct from other events. And that it will be facilitated by someone who is directing the conversation, who is holding the space, and setting forth and almost like the guardian of those agreements. And that's a very important distinction, as the difference between a facilitator holding circle versus a workshop leader or a teacher or a networking hostess, right? Those people are not holding the same circle structure. They're not holding the space the same way. It's different. The facilitator is really making sure that everyone feels safe, that everyone is feeling seen and heard, and is directing the circle to go in that direction. So I just wanted to clarify that piece. And someone has a question about religion. So the way I look at it, like I said before, is that circle is sacred and it's spiritual, but that does not mean that it's religious. And so all religions can kind of, in a way, be checked at the door, or you could think of it as every religion is honored in the circle. There is no, well, you're Jewish and I'm Catholic, and no, you have to come in willing to respect and honor all other religions. That this is non-denominational, and so all religions are welcome, all beliefs are welcome, but you are not to impose your religion, because part of what we do in circle is that we don't coach, fix, or convert. We honor and respect each other, and we listen, right? And so that is, I think, a really important distinction in don't bring your religion to convert others or to think that your religion is better than others, but to really honor and to listen to everyone else. So that's how I would handle that piece. All right, sisters. So thank you for being here with me, and I'll catch you next time.